Tuesday, January 20th, special school board meeting, work session. May I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Ambler?
Here.
Mrs. Getter?
Here.
Mr. Mowry?
Here.
Mrs. Neese?
Here.
Mrs. Nunnery?
Here.
Mr. Homan?
Here.
Ms. Maney?
Here.
Mr. Wells is here.
Good. May we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, we have the adoption of the agenda. May I have a motion to adopt tonight's agenda?
So moved.
So moved by Jason Mallory.
Okay.
Second,
Yes.
by Amy,
No, Nyland.
or Miley Getter. Roll call?
Mr. Ambler?
Yes.
Mrs. Getter?
Yes.
Mr. Mowry?
Yes.
Mrs. Neese?
Yes.
Mrs. Nunnery?
Yes.
Next is board discussion, ESPERT. I do.
Yeah. So, we can get into, what ESPERT is exactly. The reason for today's discussion comes from, this has been given in Miamisburg previously since 2018. It is something that the Montgomery County ESC provides. It does not, I'm just giving some background, it does not have a cost to the district, as the Adamus board picks up the cost for that. We currently have, I believe, about 300 spots that we can use. We are one of many districts in the county that not all who want to do it actually are permitted to do it or granted access to do it. What we had determined is that it would be given to 9th grade students this year. It does ask questions about some mental health type general questions, drug or alcohol use type questions, depression, things of that nature. We added, so how it typically goes, there'd be a screener. It is done one-on-one with the child. Then there would be a brief intervention meeting with the child to determine if what they thought they kind of heard from the child was something worth looking into for the health and safety of the child. And at that stage, parent notification would happen before any, and then handed over really to parents for treatment or options given to parents if that was the path they so chose. In Miamisburg this year, we had determined that we would add a layer of parent contact following the initial screening, so the asking of questions of the students, of the 9th grade students. We would then, before anyone were to meet with the child to discuss anything, at that time, parents would be notified and consent would be given before moving forward. There are this year a lot of differences based on, or compared to previous years, including law change, including policy adoptions that have happened since the last time ESPERT was given to any students in Miamisburg last school year. Upon review of this and hearing from board members, it became evident that we do need to make sure we're aligned with A, law, B, policy, and do it in the right way. Now, before that, I will share with you, because there were differing conversations with different board members for myself, I want to make sure the will of the board is to A, give the screener to begin with. And if we agree that's the case, then B, ensure, and my job is to ensure that it does meet not only the law, but our policy in particular. And so the order of how things might need to happen might need to be changed, and or the implementation changed. But before we get there, we need to agree, and I need to implement the will of the board as yes, we'd like to see our students be given the screener. We feel it's beneficial. I've heard from other superintendents, they feel it's beneficial. I've heard from parents it is, but that in no way, determines what we would like to see done here in Miamisburg.
In 2018, you shared with me that this was given through grades 7 through 12, right?
I believe it was 7 through 12, yes.
And why shouldn't we do that now? With mental health being issues in such a large sector of our community, I mean, I kind of drafted a draft resolution for the board to consider to expand this to include grades 7 and 8 and 10, 11, and 12 too. But just be mindful of our board policies that require parental consent for those things to occur.
Yes. Well, go ahead. Yeah.
When we first started down the road with this, it's always been funded through Adamus prevention funding. And over the years, that Adamus prevention funding has shifted somewhat to where the amounts that we were originally provided and could choose programming from have shrunk over the last several years. So it left us to only being able to have, as Ms. Maney mentioned, 300 spots.
Can we open this up to the first 300 parents who provide consent for their kids to do it?
That's something that we can definitely think about. We also talked about, if we are shifting gears and looking for parental consent, we can see how many ninth graders we get consent from and then move to another grade level. But there are options, but we would, because that's where the funding is, I would have to stay within that 300, because I agree with you 100%, Mr. Mowry, that we should be doing this across the board. It's the lack of funding that allows us to be able to.
How much
do
is
that.
it per student? Does it cost,
I am not prepared to answer that. I do not remember what it was.
Do we know why the allotment's only for 300? Is that because?
It was based on, I had X number of dollars for programming, and it was a per pupil cost of, okay, I have my budget, I can do 300 spots.
Well,
Because there
if
was other programming that we selected as well.
Just reviewing this myself, one thing that jumped off the page to me is that, our policy, specifically 2416, requires us to get written consent if a student is ever evaluated in such a way to reveal mental health or substance abuse issues. So, we either need to change our policy to enable this to go on as is, or
Yeah.
I think the more prudent thing to do, and I explained to Ms. Maney in our prior conversations, is I think this needs to be bigger. And even if there's more outside funding, if we figure out a per pupil cost, maybe raise money to support that throughout the community. I think there's a lot of ways that it could grow, but I think the parental consent component is something that we have to be cognitive of.
Ms. Maney, can you clarify if you've checked with legal, if we are in compliance with how we have notified parents thus far?
Yes, I have. And so what's interesting with this is we are per legal guidance, and I actually just received an email walking in here. We're compliant with the law, and we're compliant with House Bill 8. Our board policy that talks about the prior written consent prior to, and then there's a list of items that was adopted, it was just boarded in November and proposed last March. That the advice given from legal is to get the prior consent to do the ESPERT screener based on our policy, but that the process we currently have laid out is in accordance with the law on House Bill 8. So the recommendation is to do the prior written consent because our policy does require it.
Is that just for healthcare services or mental health care services?
It does, our policy does spell out mental health.
Is it a mental health service or a mental health screening?
So in that regard, I spoke to the Montgomery County ESC when this conversation began, and what was shared with me is that those providing the screener are not mental health providers. Therefore, it's not considered by Montgomery County ESC to be a mental health screener, nor is that the guidance they've been given, so that in accordance with the law, it's not considered a mental health service. And so that's where, when Katie and I first had a conversation about this a while back, that was shared with me, and that's why we made the decision, you know what, it's not considered by them to be a mental health service. However, let's contact parents before anyone meets with a child to discuss how they may have answered a question.
Before
Because
the
we
brief
felt it was
intervention?
prudent. Yes, before
Okay.
the brief intervention, and that's something Miamisburg decided to do.
And just to be clear, the entire premise of SBIRT is to evaluate the screeners to determine if they reveal mental health disorders or drug and alcohol issues, correct?
Oh, I think
That's
it's
not
to look
how
for
I-
triggers. I think it's to give you a, what's the word I want to use? Not trigger.
At risk?
Yeah, well,
Like a factor or risk
no,
factor.
yeah, risk factor, yes, to determine if there's a risk factor. That, because the person that gives those tests, if they're not a psychologist or social worker or anything like that, then they can't, diagnose. And so, but there are ways for them to ascertain if a student has risk factors. So if you look at the document, I mean, they talk about riding in a car with someone who's high. I mean, to me, that's risky behavior. If you vape, that's risky. If you have you smoked, use alcohol to relax, I mean, things like that. That's risky, and parents, should be notified, and I appreciate that you have kind of massaged the process so that immediately, if risk factors are determined, the parent would be notified.
But I think also, if I might interject, that Ms. Nunnery where the confusion lies is Board Policy 2416. So 2416 is the one that requires parental consent prior to a survey provided that would flag a student for mental health or psychological problems of the student or the family, or illegal, antisocial, self-incriminating, demeaning behavior. So those pieces would technically flag in this particular screener. So, is the screener, is it a survey, whatever, but it does conflict with that policy, which is kind of where Ms. Maney and I talked about then. Probably the safest thing would be to back it up and get parent consent before we provide the screener.
What's easiest for it to be most successful, change the policy or change the written opt-in consent?
Well, I mean, to be quite honest with you, I mean, I was, this one, I don't see the screener as a survey, but I understand where people are, because of what it says in here about what is flagging. I mean, it's a gray area. If the policy is able to be changed, I think we could clarify that language. I just don't know how much of this, it does refer to, the revised code, so I'm just wondering how much of this is legal versus.
That's why I just had Nyla look at, there are about 5 legal statutes that are tied to the bottom of that, that I think is why Neola put that in there.
So then the big
And it
question is how
was
much
last
can we change?
modified February 27th of 2025. I think there were changes in February that happened that drove that.
And I know we have a session with our Neola guy here coming up on Monday. We can certainly ask about this policy and how much of this is, if that's what the will of the board is, how much of this is things that we chose versus what has to be in there.
Well, Monday's when the screener's supposed to happen, right?
Well, if we're gonna flip the tables and do consent, we're not gonna be able to do it on Monday.
Change the date.
One of the things that, I know there was a question about whether there was board action, and there was board action for ESPERT in policy 5350, and it's consistent with the intent of that mental health and wellness policy. And I know we don't explicitly list it as ESPERT, but we don't explicitly list reading programs or math programs or assessments, just because, the models change and it's a broad policy. So I just wanted to clarify that we have taken board action.
Another thing, Katie, I was curious about, House Bill 8 required us to have these policies in place by July 1 and identify these programs identify these programs to parents and give them the chance to opt in at the beginning of the school year. I know I sent you a note, I couldn't find that in my daughter's final forms, which is relative since she's currently a freshman. What happened there?
So the actual funding for Adamus is a, January to December 31st cycle. So at the time, at the beginning of the school year, we would not have known that we were going to be doing this, so that's why it would not have been in ahead of time.
In the future, could we do a boilerplate permission that if mental health or behavioral or substance abuse screeners become available throughout the year because of funding, do you choose to opt in or opt your child out of those services so that we already have that? It's like a boilerplate. I looked at other districts and that looks like that's kind of what they did because it's unsure what those are gonna look like.
Right.
That way it puts it in front of the parents and then you know how many students you have to get, you know, if it's 50, it's 50, if it's 500, it's 500.
Right.
But it'll help us identify the funding target too that we need if it's more than 300 or more. Those funds ebb and flow.
Right. Yeah, I mean, absolutely, we can, this is the time of year when I start building final forms for next year, and that's the other thing too, the timing of it is, I have to have it done and ready way before it gets released to the families, so that's definitely something that's on our list of how can we incorporate this in the final forms, making sure we're collecting that information from the parents. But I appreciate your input of a more general, prevention programming sort of, language.
As long as there's two boxes.
Yeah.
Opt in or opt out, and if they don't answer it, I think what House Bill 8 was there to do was remove implied consent.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the board policy and the House bill itself say that the option to decline or opt out. It doesn't say, it says consent for mental health services. I agree with you 100% there.
Right.
And we always look for parent consent if we are talking anything along mental health services. But just for services in general, it says decline or opt out.
And I'll share here too. I did just forward the email that we got from the legal opinion on behalf, you know, of the board for today. But I'll share basically the synopsis. At the end of the email, I'll just read it directly. It says, finally, the beginning of year disclosure requirement in House Bill 8 involves healthcare services offered or facilitated by the school. House Bill 8 does not require advanced disclosure for every screening method that might be used to identify student needs. While the way in which the school district aims to implement ESPERT does not violate House Bill 8, careful consideration must be given to whether it does violate the policy 2416, as we've discussed today. Policy 2416 imposes requirements beyond those in House Bill 8 to require written parental consent before a student can participate in a screening that reveals information about a student's mental or psychological problems, among several other potentially sensitive topics such as a political affiliation. In accordance with policy 2416, an assessment that by itself reveals a student's mental screen blacked out, psychological problems cannot be administered without written parental consent. However, the universal screening tool the school district plans to use does not diagnose mental or psychological problems. Rather, it flags certain risk factors that may warrant further evaluation. The school district will obtain written parental consent before administering additional evaluations or tools that could diagnose a student's mental or psychological problems. To comply fully with both House Bill 8 and our policy, it's imperative that we, as a district, make sure to obtain written parental consent before providing students with mental health care services, engaging in ongoing monitoring activities with students, and or performing additional evaluations that are designed to identify students specifically with mental or psychological problems. And I do want to clarify that any services for these four things noted, we don't have the staff to provide those direct services. We would not attempt to provide actual services or any treatment of any kind. That's why there's a referral to parents to say, for you to determine what's best for your child, but we've identified risk factors.
So the way that is recommended by you, Ms. Manny, is to go ahead and do the screener, and then if there is more clarification needed from that student by brief intervention, before that point, parents will be notified.
I think that probably based on everything as a whole and to make sure that we're compliant with our policy, we should get the written consent prior to giving the screener. That is not initially what I had thought we would be doing. We were very comfortable with following House Bill 8 and notifying parents following the screener before anyone had a conversation with any child. But upon review and digging into this, I think that probably best practice, and frankly, just to be compliant with policy, we need to get written consent prior to giving the screener as well. And in that case, as Mrs. Lucas shared, if we get written consent from 150 ninth grade parents, we thought ninth grade was a good time. It's proven with data that that's a tough transitional year for students. We want, positive time going into high school. It can be a tough transitional year coming out of middle school. We all know that stage of life can be difficult, and to start high school can be even more difficult. So we thought ninth grade was a nice time to start identifying that if a child needs support or help through their family and medical providers. But if we don't have 300 that are interested in going through that process, we could open it up to other grades and still use our 300 seats in Miamisburg.
We definitely want to use the 300 slots.
Okay.
I do.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
If we have 300 available, that's why I think if we could open it up to everybody and give them,
The only way we could open it up to everybody is if the screening was given without an accompanying screener. It would just be passed out, and fill it out, and turn it in, to put it in a box. That's the only way that I see that we could do it for everybody, because we wanna do it one-on-one, it does put some restraints on us.
Talking with Shannon Cox or ESC, do we know what other schools have done, or how many slots or spots that they have? Or what grade did they implement their ESPERT screens?
I do not have that information. Each one of us has our own communication with Adamus about how much money they budgeted towards us. There's a lot of different things that go into deciding how much each district gets. So I have no idea. A district that is maybe higher socioeconomic status than we are, higher number of students and low socioeconomic status are probably going to get more funding than we do. So.
Would they be able to share the per cost per student screening cost? So let's say, for instance, we had 600 students and their families who wanted to participate in this, and the cost was 10 grand. Could the board appropriate that cost to bridge that gap? Could we appropriate the gap funding to service more students?
That would be a question with ESC, because we're talking about their staff and whether or not they would have enough staffing to fulfill a need such as that.
Right, I'm just saying,
But that's something that we could also look at
Right,
next school year.
Yeah.
correct.
It can also be, we can also talk about priorities. There's a lot of things that we use that prevention funding for, and if the board decides that this is a priority, then I can also kind of shift some of the things that we choose.
I think both things have to be a priority. I think mental health has to be a huge priority. I think parental consent has to be a huge priority too.
Right, the meeting was about parental consent, not about the legitimacy of mental health services. We weren't here to really discuss the need for mental health services. We're trying to get that implemented. We wanted to discuss the screening process and the steps to go about that. Ann, did you have something to say?
I'm looking at the email, Ms. Maney.
Yes.
And because honestly, I'm really concerned we're gonna miss some kids with an opt-in. We're gonna miss some kids that are at risk to be potential school shooters, suicide ideation. I see it says here, in accordance with policy 2416, an assessment that by itself reveals a student's mental or psychological problems cannot be administered without parental consent. However, the universal screening tool the school district plans to use does not diagnose mental or psychological problems.
But the screener who is evaluating the student does.
But they're not evaluating.
So it goes back to your comment of it's a trigger
It's
Oh,
risk
you-
factor,
It's a
so
risk-
it's not an
It goes on to
evaluation.
say, it
It's
goes-
a 0, 1, 2, 3. As a healthcare provider, this type of screening, and it may not talk about nicotine or drugs or whatever, but this type of screening is used universally in healthcare. So, you just add up the numbers, that's
Yeah, the
all it
person's-
is.
For the person's facilitating.
Yeah, yes, they're
The
just.
ask and the
yes.
documentation, they're
And
not.
so they add up the numbers, and if the person has over a certain number, let's say over 50, it's not gonna be 50. But if it's greater than 50, then we understand that that student could potentially be at risk.
So
That's when we notify the parent and say, this is what we found, but they're not diagnosing, treating, or
Well-
evaluating in any way. They're adding up the numbers, and if the numbers, they probably have something that they follow, and if it says, less than 5, low risk, 5 to 10, moderate risk, 10 to 15, high risk, and that would be all. Anybody could do that.
So I'm just curious, make sure I understand right, because I asked the details of this. And the way I understood is everybody would be screened once, and based upon their score, they would be evaluated to see if they needed a second screening.
There would be a brief intervention, which involves meeting with the
Yep.
child 4 times.
Yeah.
And prior to that, parents would be notified. There wouldn't be that brief intervention without parents knowing in Miamisburg.
Right.
Yeah.
So, based on the first score, there would be an evaluation that occurred to determine if the 4 meetings and second screener would need to happen, correct?
Parents
No.
would be asked.
I was gonna say, I do not believe that's correct. I believe that, so the first go around is just the screeners. Then they will go back and assess their data. Any students who flagged in, I don't know, whether
Right,
medium
whatever
risk
the
to high
scores are.
risk,
Sure.
then that list of students would be the ones we would then make the contact with the parent and say, they flagged in this risk area, we'd like to meet with them 4 times just to try to give them some strategies or some things to maybe help them work through whatever their anxiety is or whatever they're dealing with, and the parent would then get permission for them to have those 4 meetings. And then, of course, if there was an extreme, like off the charts score or something came out in that initial screening, then there would be an immediate referral to our counselors who then have protocol for what they do for a student who's in crisis.
Right, I'm not adverse to any of this, I just wanna make sure I understand right. So, the assessment, based upon the score, is the initial evaluation, correct?
It's not an evaluation, it's a screener. There's a difference between an evaluation and a screener.
I'm a little nervous about using the terms evaluation and assessment.
Mhm.
In healthcare, those mean different things.
What do they mean?
Well, we're not doing an assessment, we're doing a screening. And when you do the screening, you're getting a number score. When you get the number score, you're determining then that
So what we're
student
saying here-
needs to be, we need to contact that person's parent.
So the evaluation, assess, whatever you wanna word,
Yeah.
is based upon 5 to 9.
Yes,
That would mean that
yes.
they're evaluated for this.
Yes,
Reveal-
exactly.
Reveals, but
Yes,
I just wanna be very careful that, we adopted a policy that said that we wouldn't evaluate or reveal these things without parental written consent.
We're not evaluating them.
I appreciate everybody's comments, but this scoring chart is there to evaluate.
to determine if we need to go forward by contacting the parent.
Right, we've.
Why are we averse to contacting the parent before doing it? I don't understand what
The
the,
parents have been contacted already.
That was my understanding.
To be
They have
clear,
already
parents have
been
already been
contacted that this
contacted.
is going
To
to
be
happen.
clear,
how many parents read that text
all
message?
parents were given, electronic notification with an opt-out at the bottom. That did happen to all 9th grade parents.
With an opt-out at the bottom of the third link.
I don't know about the link.
It was-
I didn't receive it.
Right, and so when I read through that, I mean, I got it, cause I have a freshman, and I just wanna read this to you. The text said, message from MHS, good morning, 9th grade parents and students. MHS will be working with Montgomery County Educational Service CE, period. That's all the text message said, unless you click the link. And, just like today, and I didn't click the link. until I had several people call me asking me what this meant. And I went back and clicked the link, and then I had my own questions. Just like today, Miamisburg parents, please check your email for information regarding Miamisburg City School District's SOCI, period. I think Apogee is a great tool, but we get so much information sent to us by electronic means these days. It is very easy to look at something, well, that means nothing to me, and move on, right? Unless school's closed or.
And the same thing happens with parents that read an email about opting in. It's, you know, it happens in
I don't
those
think we could be afraid
situations.
for honoring what the parent's will is of their student while they're in our custody at school. I think that's something we should embrace.
Okay, so let's go back to what our purpose is today. And our purpose today is to determine if we're going to move forward with the ESPERT or not, and how we're going to do it. So, first of all, let's determine if we feel like administering the ESPERT is valuable to our students. Do we all agree, and I think we have to vote on that, do we, Chris? But do we all agree that this is a valuable tool for 300 students?
No, I think the ESPERT is here, we have 300 spots, and it's already been allotted. And I think that is a no-brainer that you go through or go forward with it. I don't have a problem with that at all.
I don't have a problem with it as long as the parents consent to it.
So
I don't
then-
feel comfortable making that decision for somebody else's household.
So then the second thing we need to determine is, how are we going to notify the parents that this is available to their student? And based on what we've received from the attorneys and what we just discussed, are we going to ask the parent to complete a document stating that they opt in and send it electronically? Then thirdly, based on how many parents say yes, we have some leftover spots, then we can determine where those are, Katie can help with Ms. Maney to decide where those spots need to go. Because we're just really talking, we keep talking around it, but we're not really getting to the meat of what we want to decide.
I think those three things are spot on. I think that's exactly what.
So do we need to vote on that, or is there any more discussion regarding that?
I just think we have to decide if we want it to be administered, that's for sure.
Well,
And I think we have
we've
decided
determined that
that.
it's going to be administered.
Yeah.
So that's
That-
number
But
one,
Shelby and
check.
I didn't really weigh in, so
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure, about 3 people did, so.
Well, so
I
we
guess
check
that's
box.
okay.
Are you,
Yeah.
Ann, you and Shelby okay with administering?
Yes.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
so that's taken care of. Then the next one is, how are we going to notify the parents,
All right, stop.
okay?
Stop right there. Don't go any farther, don't say another word. So we're clear where we keep moving forward, because we keep going forward and go back. How are we gonna notify? My understanding is this was already sent out to the freshmen.
Yeah, so currently where we stand today is, there was a message sent out via our Thrill Share communication service to all freshman parents. It sounds like, because obviously there's limited characters and text messages that come out, you would have to open the link, and there was a letter that explained it and had an option for you to opt out as a parent if you didn't want your child to participate.
Hand that to Chris, he can click
And
through those links.
we
if he
then-
wants to.
We then,
Yeah.
would give the universal screener.
You have to go up to
And
January
then-
7th.
Previously, we were of the understanding, or at least I was of the understanding, that we were compliant with our policy based on the fact that we'd be doing a screener that's universal, and then parents would be contacted if a score were met, like you said, the measure were met, before any child was met with individually. We
Determine
added
that the
meeting
patient
parents
was
first.
the patient, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The student, I'm used to dealing with patients,
Yeah.
that the student was a moderate risk or
Right,
higher risk.
Right,
And then having discussion with the parents about what direction they wanna
that
go.
wanna go, yes.
So Chris, are you asking, do we need to notify the parents again?
That's kind of where I'm getting at,
Okay.
because Jason asked the question right at the tiptoe, was back in 2018, this was given for 7th to 12th graders, and then That was in 2018, we're in 2026. But because of Adamus and the funding, and we're down to 300 spots. All right, I understand that, I'm clear, I'm good so far. Now, the determination that we gave it at 9th grade was from where? From who?
If you look back over our ESPERT data from the last several years that we've done it, freshmen traditionally have flagged higher in the areas of anxiety, and we equate that to the transition from the middle school to the high school. So we felt like if we only had that many spots, that would be a good grade level to target and potentially help some of those students through those issues they're having with transition and that sort of thing.
I would agree with that. Okay, so now I'm good. Now, with that being said, is we've notified or sent something out. So right now, it's in the hands of the parents that either see it or don't see it, correct?
I think the conflict is we sent something out that is inconsistent with our current board policy. That's the problem.
Okay, we'll get to that here in a
Oh,
second.
okay.
So I just want to understand before I start voting or whatever. We have sent something out to parents that either see it or don't see it. And currently right now, it's set up to be at a opt-out, that some parents that don't see it maybe not want their parents to, or child to do it, but they don't see it and the child goes ahead and does it, correct? All right. The determination of what Jason is saying is, let's give it to 300 kids that do open up their email or whatever the case may be, and we give it to those. It could be 100 7th graders, 100 8th graders, 100 11th graders, whatever the case may be, but that's more of an opt-in that are invested in their kids' education and knows what's going on in the household. But I think if I hear you correctly, or maybe if I even hear you correctly, is sometimes that the student that may need the service, their parent is invested, they're not flagged. So that's why the determination was to give it at 9th grade. And I would agree with that assessment. There is a huge transition from 8th grade to 9th grade. Teaching up there for as many years as I did each semester for a week, I saw it firsthand. So that's where I'm trying to get my understanding and wrap my head around of where we're at. But we're also asking right now at this point in time is what I think in one of your 3 bullet points was, we've already sent it out. But now we're asking for parents' permission to even sit at the table, correct?
Well, I think that's what our policy requires of us.
If we send it again,
If
it's
we send
only
it again.
those people, so we could only have 175, because the test is given Monday,
Well, I
correct?
guarantee you that if we send another notification
We'll
and
have to
we're
reschedule
asking
it.
for written permission, that the number of participants will be probably half that versus the ones opting out. You know, it's called implied permission. Right, when you do opting out, it's called implied permission, so that
Like
means,
consent.
yes, it
Yeah.
means that the person is stating, my student is at the school, I give you, I'm not opting out, so I'm giving you implied consent or implied permission for my student to take part in the screening. Then we're going to get probably 90% of the students in the 9th grade versus I would guess 40 to 50% of the students if we require a written consent. And I want to follow the policy. I'm so torn with this whole thing because being a healthcare professional, having dealt with young people who have had mental health issues, have tried to commit suicide, And it scares me. It scares me that we're gonna miss students that if they just had a little bit of support or help, could make it through high school and be very successful and feel calmer and more in control. But
Do you have
but I
staff?
also wanna follow,
sorry.
I also wanna follow the policy. The policy's written, so.
Well, Nyla, the policy, I appreciate that you're concerned about the policy because it can be confusing, but reading the email that, Ms. Manny had read out loud to us, reading it now, it says right here that the universal screening tool the school district plans to use does not diagnose mental or psychological problems. Rather, it flags certain risk indicators that may warrant further evaluation.
Yeah, it's a risk-based questionnaire, is what it is.
Right, so from what my interpretation of this email is that we are abiding by the law already. We have already abided by the law by having the opt-out model with the text message. And if that's something we want to look at later on a more effective way, that can be another discussion. But as it is right now, we have complied with that.
Well, and
I also think,
I
I
thought
want
the
to
email
say
said that we shouldn't do it
policy,
without opting out.
I'm sorry, I'm just saying.
I know Neola wrote that policy, but it is very
Very
confusing. I will have to
Yeah, I
say,
think
and
it's
I,
confusing.
just going back to the, what Nyla was saying, just the CDC Youth Risk Behavior Survey, we know that 40% of our students, have a sense of hopelessness. We have, 20% that seriously consider suicide, 16% make a plan, and 9% attempt it. So that's data over like 11,000 students that were interviewed in our country.
The last note that Heather Migden, the attorney for Frost Brown Todd Note, said to comply fully with House Bill 8 and MCSD Policy 2416, it is imperative that the school district make sure to obtain written parental consent before providing students with healthcare services, engaging ongoing monitoring activity with students and/or performing additional evaluations that are designed to identify students with mental or psychological problems.
Right, and that happens after the screening in consultation with the parent. Yeah, you're exactly right. So we would not be providing any ongoing monitoring activities. We would not be providing any more evaluations. That would take place with a mental health professional.
So
This is just a screening.
And before, the parent wasn't even consulted for the brief intervention, but we're putting that in place now.
Yes, we
So,
chose to put that in our
I think-
district.
Yes, I'm all for that. I
Who
think
came up
that's-
with the scoring model in this from Adamus?
Oh,
Those
that-
are published.
yeah, these are standardized, correct? Yeah, these are, yeah, yeah.
So what we're saying is that, if, make sure I understand everybody correctly, these scoring models are not there to evaluate or reveal risk.
It reveals risk, it doesn't evaluate or diagnose mental
Or
health
assess.
disorders, or
Yes.
assess mental health disorders.
Yeah, it provides a numerical score to show potential risk. So then that way, the parents can be contacted and say, your student did this, this is where they scored, and we want you to be aware of it.
Would that be considered a standardized test?
No, because there's no standard score.
Okay.
That
It's not
you're
a
getting back
standardized-
into the evaluation side of things when you talk about standardized.
Not a standardized test in the education realm,
Right.
but a standardized screening in a healthcare realm.
Gotcha.
Yes, I would say yes.
When I think of standardized, I'm looking for stanine and deviation and all of those.
Yes, yes.
I was just curious, but yeah, I think that interpreting that policy, it clearly states that we are good to go with what we've done, and we have already made the right move. Ms. Manny made the right move in already implementing a parental notification before anything else happens after that screening.
I have a question too for the board. How would you feel about a reminder email or text being sent to the parents? Just stating, this is just a reminder, you were notified on such and such a date that this screening was going to take place. We're just reminding you that your student will be, unless you opt out, your student will be taking part in this screening.
I think that's fine.
I mean,
Real-
that's another touch point.
Real quick,
Parent.
about the screening tools that are a part of this, PHQ 9 is a patient health questionnaire, and that's the first thing we looked at the scoring. It said this is a multi-purpose instrument for screening, diagnosing, monitoring, and measuring the severity of depression. And this specifically says engaging in monitoring activities with students and evaluations that are designed to identify students with mental problems, or psychological problems. And this first thing says that that's exactly what it's there to do. So,
But a person
piece
has
of
to
it.
do it. A professional person has to do it. So all the person that's doing that, all we're doing as an entity is giving the screening and doing, I gotcha, that's what it does.
that's referring to this page
But a
right
person
here.
has to do it.
The person has to evaluate it, right?
Right, yeah, so
My
we're just
understanding
saying,
is that,
yeah.
that implies where you're given it once, and maybe that's the onset, that you're given this screener multiple times throughout, once you're connected with a healthcare provider. You might be given the screener again to measure. if
Right,
it
the
moves.
professional then is going to give
That's
screening
how
tools.
it's explained to me.
Yes, a professional, the therapist or psychologist or whoever that the parent decides that their child needs to be engaged with, they will give further screenings, further testing, and they will use other standardized instruments that are similar to this, but maybe not exactly this one.
I like your idea,
again, I think
Nyla,
that
of
would
sending
be
out a reminder. I think that's a great.
Yeah, I mean, this, what do you think, Jason? What do you think, Chris? I mean, I just don't.
I mean, I
don't
think
it
we,
will hurt anything.
I think we have a policy that says what it says. And I mean, I think we could mince words and use different words and different assessments, but this is designed to reveal risks.
The
associated
email from
with
the
mental
lawyer disagrees with that, though. They said that it is not in infringement with the policy. To continue to be in alignment with the policy, we don't continue anything outside that without parental consent.
We're just doing the screening, adding up the numbers, and turning it over to the parents.
That keeps us in compliant with House Bill 8 and the policy 2416. Would anyone else agree with that?
And also the revised code. 3313473, something
Well,
like that.
I think for us to be in compliance with the revised code, we would have to notify parents of programs like this during the school year at the beginning of the school year. And the fact that we didn't puts us in breach of 3313473, because that was a statutory requirement within the Parents' Bill of Rights. That didn't happen.
But you can't notify them if you don't know it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
So,
Because of the funding.
it's
Are
like,
we worried about getting sued or something?
I think we
Like,
have to be, because if we put, somebody's child through a program like this,
It's not a program.
it's not a program, it's a screening tool.
okay, if we put somebody's child through the exercises that are outlined in this stapled thing, and they find out after the fact, I mean, I think they have a legitimate claim that we didn't follow our board policy.
Are you wanting to move to an opt-in model completely for everything, or just this?
I'm wanting to follow the Neola board policy that we vetted, reviewed, and approved.
For the previous, for in the beginning of the school year, having a list of screenings, is that the one you're referring to? The one that we have?
I don't think that's
now?
reasonable, because I think there's a list of screenings that will evolve throughout the school year. I
Right.
think there needs to be we're required to have an opt-in to services such as these. And I think that opt-in could be general beyond the specific service. Right, Katie? I mean, isn't that what you would typically recommend?
Potentially, I mean, it could be.
For the future, this is for the future.
Right.
For the
We gotta-
future, but I
Yeah,
mean,
we gotta deal with what we're talking about
we were supposed to
now.
do it, we didn't. That's water under the bridge, but I don't think, because we didn't do that, we don't know if the parents in our district opted in or opted out, because we did not ask that question, is what I'm getting at. And so I think implied consent is out the window, because we didn't do what we were supposed to do at the beginning of the school year, is what I'm saying.
But with
Paired with the fact that we have a policy that says parental consent is required.
So is the lawyer wrong?
I think the semantics of that policy survey,
Yes.
screener. I wish when we were going through that I would have thought about ESPERT, because I would have realized that there was some conflict with the wording.
Because it does say written consent for any survey, so that's,
Analysis or evaluation.
yeah, it's that, well, this is gonna be this is a survey.
So that's why I'm saying if
So,
we're-
yeah, so it's,
If we're gonna do this without an opt-in consent model, then, and that's the will of the board, then our focus needs to be to change the policy, which I believe is a whole lot harder and impedes this service getting out to the parents who are willing to sign their kids up for it quicker. So I think opening it up and following the policy is the prudent thing to do.
So do we wanna like vote on it?
I don't, I think we already moved on the policy unless we're gonna move to change the policy.
go ahead, Stacy. what were you gonna
Well, I
say?
was gonna say, I've heard, we know we wanna move forward, we think it can be beneficial for some of our students. We wanna go that route, we know parents have been given, at least the district has sent out communication to say this is happening if you'd like to opt out. To be ultra covered, just to ensure we could move towards opt-in, that would require a change in date and things of that nature and implementation. As I said before, you know, my assumption that we were meeting the board policy wordage came with the addition of talking to parents after a screener. In further review, obviously that word survey, as you mentioned just now, I would prefer to be definitely covered and on the safe side of providing the service to students and not missing that opportunity, and we're all on the same page on that. So I know that House Bill 8 doesn't carve out universal assessments, but I think our policy makes it pretty clear with that word survey, and maybe that's something we look at in the future. You know, we revisit this policy moving towards next year if we think it needs to be very specific and clear. But to get this potential helpful tool to our students this year, which I'm hearing is what is wanted, what are your all thoughts about moving towards an opt-in? It'll change our timeline and our implementation, and certainly our intent was to be compliant with our policy, of course, with what we have in place, which is why we added that extra touch point for parents, prior to anything beyond just a
How long
screener.
would it take to modify the policy and run it through Neola's legal screening and, I mean, how long does that take?
Well, you'd have to have a meeting in place, and the fastest
Two
route.
readings of it before.
Well,
it's
fastest
adopted?
route, you're permitted to waive a first reading and then board it, but I mean,
My concern is it'd be past schools out at the end of the year, so. The fastest way to implement it is with written consent that we ask for, that we say we're gonna ask for.
Could we, I'm just trying to think outside the box here, because everyone thinks it's a valuable tool. So if we do an opt-in, and I get what Jason's saying, because sometimes I'll get the text message and I'm like, unless you click on it, you don't know what it is. Could we resend it back out in both an email, where you see the full thing, and an actual voice message?
Oh, voice message.
How many students have opted out to date, Katie? Or how many families have?
Ms. May, you have been
I
communicating
touched base
with
with the principal at the high school last week, and he had heard or knew of about 10 or less. I don't have up-to-date data today, but we can get it.
Okay, go ahead, Steve.
The other thing is, once that goes out, if you wait a couple days, you can run a list, I do believe, and then check mark who hasn't opted in or opted out, and do a reminder about it, kind of like lunch charges. Hey, you have a lunch charge. Hey, you have a lunch charge. You know, I'm just trying to.
Yeah, think of
I'm just trying to
ways
think the way that we're going to be
yes.
able to capture for
Katie?
kids be compliant with the policy.
Yes.
Katie, can your staff, cause I mean, you see at-risk students every day you come to work, and so does your staff. I mean, could you assemble an internal list of who you believe is at risk based upon the indicators you see on a daily basis and reach out to them
Students
and
that
encourage them to opt in?
The students that we already, know are at risk are more than likely already receiving services. We have, student assistant teams at all our buildings that look at, kids that are exhibiting, behaviors that would flag them in these areas. What your ESPERT screener is gonna catch more often than not are those kiddos that aren't projecting it.
The messy middle that you guys refer to a lot.
You're not seeing it because it's not in your face. They're the quiet ones that sort of slide into the background. Those are the ones that the screeners tend to identify versus the ones that we already know about, and that we're already putting all our resources into.
I do like Steve's idea, cause it's, we're using multiple ways to notify parents. Voicemail message, cause maybe they don't look at their email very often, but, please check your email.
The text is hard because you're limited to characters.
Yes, but the
Yeah.
email you are not. And then we can have
we
an
do-
opt-in, I guess, we can have an opt-in.
Can we
case.
distribute that through final forms?
Final Forms is, on our side, it works differently than it does on the athletic side. On our side, anytime I add something to Final Forms, you're not gonna probably understand this language, but it turns all of the parents red. And then the administrative assistants are working their butt off to try to make sure that those parents actually go in, check that form, turn them back to green. It's not made to do things in the middle of the year. It's more that.
Have them ready in the
weekday
summer
pop.
for the start of school.
Yes, so I'm building it now for next year, and I gotta make sure everything's in there before release, because I don't wanna disrupt the system.
That's a great way to have these numbers ahead of time.
So if we did, adopt what Steve said, then how would we get the written consent? Would it be in the email? They would have to maybe just check a box? Could it be that simple as them checking a box and sending it to us?
With a Google form.
I was thinking a Google form,
Okay.
kid's
Okay.
first, last name, I give consent for the screening, as outlined above, whatever.
And write, and just print their name, the parent's name.
Well, once they
correct.
submit it, then it populates on a sheet.
Okay,
And
okay,
it collects their email address, so you know it's coming from their email.
okay.
And that would be how you would
That
opt in.
sounds really good to me. And I
I'm
like the
just trying to
idea of the
think through a thing.
voicemail.
We all see the benefit of it, we
Use
wanna
all
try
of
to
our
stay,
communication options. Yeah. that's what I like.
I mean, I would be okay with that for this year, but I think we need to look at that
Yes.
policy. I really think we're amiss not to put ourselves at risk of not identifying students. I don't want that on my,
Yeah, I think we have two risks. One is not following the policy, and then the other one is students not being assessed. Well, it's not an assessment, screened for, future referrals.
Do we have a liaison at Neola that can answer legal insight questions for our policy?
They have a team of lawyers that do that. We'll be reaching out to Norm.
There are several statutes that are referenced at the bottom of policy 2416. Did we get an analysis from them of how those laws require this to be written just like it is?
Yeah, the other thing we can take a look at too, Jason, is to have Norm give us other policies that other districts have tweaked. That way it kind of gives you guys a chance to say, yeah, we want to tweak it, or no, we like this, or.
I looked at this policy throughout all the other districts that use Neola, and they're all the same.
They are the same.
They are, so they're all, they're verbatim.
Which leads me to believe that it's one of those that was presented to us with no optional language, and
They believe it's required,
That's
consistent to the law, right?
I talked to board members from Centerville and West Carroll, and they're doing the opt out, but I don't know if they sent the letter at the beginning of the year. That's the
So-
thing I don't
The,
know.
Valley View's doing the opt-out, but they did include the letter at the beginning of the year in their initial.
Just for your
Back into the parents.
timeline purposes, if we're gonna go the direction of getting permission to get the screener, we're probably not gonna be able to make that happen for January, so this won't happen, until probably March,
Okay.
because that's, the last communication I had with her, that was the next opening that they had.
And I don't know about the, I'd like to know what the other board members feel, but I don't have a problem with it being postponed, but I definitely want it to be done. Yeah, so it's okay with me if it's not till March or first of April, after spring break or whatever, you know, you can.
I think close to the year of school you make it so that we can make sure we get it full.
Yeah.
So
They'll
did
be-
I hear correctly? The Neola policy that is universal, it sounds like, at other schools? That are doing the exact same damn thing?
Yep. And they're opting out. They're considering implied consent.
However,
However,
They met their obligation to
Right,
ask
at the
parents
beginning
to
of the
opt
school
in
year.
at the beginning of the year. That's
I
the
gotcha.
critical step that we did not do.
I don't
I
know, I
need to
didn't
get some
ask them that
clarification on
part.
that.
I'm gonna say it again, that law does not say opt-in, it says that you can deny or opt out of all the services that we provide. But we do have to provide a notification at the beginning of the year that gives them that right to say, refuse or deny any, services. that-
which we are doing now, it wouldn't have mattered if you're doing it today or if you did it August 1st, correct?
And that will be, we'll make sure that's part of final forms going into next year.
So the determination is yes, we all agree that the ESPERT tool is important and we want it to be administered. And then part two, does everybody want to use the email communication, the voicemail with a follow-up text to all parents? And then are we going to ask the parents to give permission, written permission?
I think we should advertise it widely. Facebook, just put it everywhere. This is available for,
I have to work with the ESC because they only have 2 people. So I'm doing it widely means more days in more buildings.
do we still use Enos in
just-
Britain as a law firm?
Yep.
What kind of stuff do we use those for stuff?
A lot of times we'll use them for negotiations.
Here's a release from Enos in Britain, that I'll just read this to you. It says, under House Bill 8, the Parents' Bill of Rights, the law requires public schools to notify parents at the start of each school year about health, counseling, and behavioral health services available at their child's school, and give parents the ability to decide, opt in or opt out, whether their child may receive services. I'll send you this link. It was posted February the 24th, 2025 on Enos in Britain's website.
I guess we just need to decide if this is a service, because it's not really a service, it's just a screening.
Correct.
Yes.
And I think that's what your determination of a particular word is.
That's the
I'm
hand
all for, at this point in time, we have, if we're the only school that's violating policy, okay. Doesn't sound like we're the only school that is violating policy if the policy is universal at other schools at the exact same thing. And from what I've heard, it doesn't matter if it's August 1st or today that everything was sent out. I am all for keeping the date the same. It's been sent out to this particular grade for Monday. However, in the future, do we know that we're violating policy? One lawyer can say yes, one lawyer can say no. If we want to change it at that particular time for 2027, I don't have a problem with it, but we've already put the cart out there, we've already put the horses out there, to then say, oh, by the way, we've had a change of heart, now it's gonna be March, or it could be April, or it could be whatever.
Why don't,
I am all for moving forward for this particular date, and if we wanna look at it in the near future, I don't have a problem for it. But because I feel that we have followed everything that we are supposed to follow, and I'm comfortable with what the ESC has indicated, I'm all for just moving forward as is.
Katie and
That's my
Stacy,
opinion.
do you guys believe, according to our policy, that this should have been an opt-in
For the
in
screen,
this, so that the screener was compliant with our policy?
for the screener, yes, I believe that an opt-out, that's what you asked me.
Opt-in.
Opt-in. I believe that the screener, because it's not evaluative, doesn't fall into that policy, but that's me personally.
Because it's called, it says survey and this is a screening.
Yeah.
They are different.
Yeah.
But when we asked for the explanation about this, the reply back that I got referred to it as a survey.
Yeah.
I believed initially by adding the parental notification immediately following this screener, which is not something we've done in the past, it's not something any other
Screening
districts
score.
do. I believed we were upholding our policy. As I've said before, we can be absolutely just make sure, I mean, the only way to just make sure interpretation gets taken out of it, which is where we are, it's an interpretation issue, is to just get the written permission from parents first before even the screener. I did believe though, at the time we were compliant with our policy based on adding the parent contact immediately following the screener.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I agree with that as well.
What do you believe, Al?
I think taking interpretation out of it would be get written consent ahead of all of it.
We're just trying to be prudent.
Cause then it's not up for interpretation, it just covers everything from there forward.
I think we're still
But as a
interpreting it.
follow-up, I think that we need to take a look at this policy and change it so we don't miss students.
I agree with that
Yeah,
too.
so
I do think it should be looked at in the future,
Yeah.
in general, not specific to this
Yes, yes.
screener.
Or brought up with Norm in our workshop for that
Yeah,
purpose?
yeah.
Yes, definitely.
I'm on the same page as Chris at this point.
I think it's what.
I'm on the same page as Chris. Everything Chris said, I agree with.
I don't think that we're gonna have a legal problem based on this and based on the wordage in the policy, so I'm torn. The semantics, that's the hang up for me.
Because I trust Nyla, and I'm within the healthcare as well,
Trust you?
is it's a screener that determines if further action is needed. And at that point in time, along with, you're getting both notifications through a parent. Now, first of all, it's a notification if you don't want your child to take it in the first place. But then if there's a trigger, you call it, right?
Yeah, a risk factor.
A risk factor, then your parent will be contacted as well directly in regards to any further action that is gonna be, available to the student and what, path is needed.
Yeah, because the parent.
That's why I'm just like, leave it alone, we can change it in the near future, moving forward, but that's why I say, it's out there. We've already said, this is when it's gonna be, as long as I can justify it and argue it, which I feel like I can argue it, I may lose, but I can argue it. So,
Well, and I think it's using the proper terms, because the screening personnel are not going to be assessing or intervening or diagnosing or anything like that. They are going to give the screening tool, they're going to rate the patient, sorry again, the student, and then they're going to notify the parent.
How can a brief
That's it.
intervention not be intervening?
It's not, there's
So
no
we have parent
intervention.
consent before the brief intervention.
Yes, there's no intervention, they're just
We have
scoring.
parent contact before that.
Okay,
for permission,
We're gonna
for the
just
brief
remember-
intervention.
They're
Got it.
scoring
Yeah.
and then talking to the parent and moving forward with the parents.
We have to
Consent.
keep remembering, we are giving the parents a chance to opt out.
so if this screener is based upon score and not individual evaluation, then why don't we give it to everybody?
Because of the
Digitally.
cost.
Because of the cost that you only have 300 spots.
Well, I mean, can't
Because
we,
it's a one-on-one
can't we
thing.
copy and print it?
Well,
And just look at the scores that we get back and give it to everybody and evaluate them ourselves and then focus on the 300 kids that need it?
I think the person
one
that,
reason you would not want to do that is because potentially this screener is going to flag somebody who is extremely high risk. If you put this into an electronic system and have someone just jot the answers down, and there's a delay between when I look at that data and I have to look at each kid individually and I have to analyze that data, and then what if I have this student who's off the charts, and how much time between when I could have intervened? So the benefit of doing it in person, which is why they do it, is if the student flags or says something that is extremely concerning, that student can then be immediately referred to the appropriate people to handle, to the parents and to the appropriate people at the building to then react to what it is that that student said.
and I would not doubt that there is the potential when a student is taking part in the screening, that it might bring up emotional or anxiety feelings, that they might even, they might get to a certain part and say, I just can't do this, or whatever, and then that would be an immediate flag for the screener, and I'm hoping that the person that's screening, this person's done this many times, and they're trained to do the screening. I mean, it's not just anybody that does the screening.
No,
Yeah, they're a professional.
prevention certified.
Yes.
Who is it? Who are they?
ESC. They're employees of the ESC.
Okay.
Even if the parent doesn't opt out, can the student say, I don't wanna do it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I do worry about the 2-month delay. That concerns me. We have a mental health crisis right now,
Yeah.
so.
The whole crisis is beginning of the school year too.
No, we're not gonna enforce it.
It's been going on for
They can
years.
say no.
So what have we determined then? So we definitely wanna give it, we've all agreed to that.
I have to go, and I'm gonna leave it up to our administrators to follow the policy that the board already approved. And I'll just leave my input at that. I have a heartbreak, someplace I have to be, so we beat this up 3 weeks to Sunday and cut words up. We vetted and approved the policy. Policy says what it says. I offered my insight on that. The administrators who I reached out to told me it was a survey. We have a policy that says that surveys have to have parental written consent, so. That's, until a policy says something different, I just expect our admins to follow the policies that they've got, so. Thanks for tonight.
I'm glad we were able to clear up some misunderstandings about what this was.
So, I'm gonna ask this, I probably shouldn't ask this. He's sitting beside you, Mr. Gregg. Is there anything, you've been sitting in, you've sat in this seat before? Is there anything that you would say to me or anybody on this board that say, look at this, or not look at that, or you can answer or you can decline?
Well, I will say I don't envy the board's position. This is a very unique situation. Yes, I mean, in the 3 terms that I spent on school board at a different district, I don't recall a situation where we had to really thread the needle like this one. Because ultimately, you've got legislation, you've got a board policy, and all of it all came together at once. I know that, again, my previous district, we did these screenings, but again, that wasn't under the shadow of House Bill 8, nor the 2416 policy. So If I had a clear experience, or past experience, I would certainly share it with the board, but I'm afraid I do not, because of the unique circumstances that this encompasses.
I guess, in reality, and I've been here 12 years, going on 13 years, and I've made, I know for sure, one wrong decision that has costed our school district and our students immensely. And I regret that to this day. However, with me saying that, is I believe that the decision I make is in regards to the best interest of the students. Meaning, if we can provide them with assistance, and I agree with a lot of things that Jason says in regards to parental consent and policy and whatever. And I go back to arguing a statement or what I believe that our school district is doing. This is one of those things that I think in the best interest we are identifying or screening. The wording is what really kind of, you have to be careful because you, as you say, it's threading the needle.
We're screening, we're not identifying.
But
We're screening.
if we can help a student that we were unfamiliar with or whatever the case may be, then we have done our job. So that's where I kind of stand, and that's why I feel as strongly as I do at this point in time, because it's been here since 2018. We only have 300 spots. It was picked in 9th grade. I understand why. I've seen the students up there. So if you want to opt out, and it makes me feel a little bit better that the parent and or student can opt out if they so desire, my next question would be, okay, so if they all opt out, and do we have 30 more spots available? Or would those be filled by somebody else up at the high school, or can we give it at a later date to other individuals? So, I mean, that's all nor here nor there later, but I feel pretty comfortable with where we're at since everything has already been sent out. And I think that then you just go and start looking at it.
How many 9th graders do we have, Katie? So we have 300 plus.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I need. You don't have to give me
And actually,
the
I just, I looked at
yes,
the
you don't have to
spreadsheet,
give me the
there's-
exact number, but we have
We have
300 plus.
387 spots to use. I did pull my spreadsheet up.
Well, I was looking at the Montgomery County ESC statement, and if you look at it, they do not use the term survey at any time. They use the term screen and screening and screener, and no, it's not survey. To me, what's gonna happen is after the student is screened and we get a score, a risk score, then they're going to, with their parents, determine what their next steps will be. That's when the professional, mental health professional is going to do surveys, assessments, testing, that type of thing. Just like you do if you have cancer, it's the same thing, and they're gonna delve into what type of situation they're dealing with a student. So I'm okay with moving forward. But I do want to definitely look at 2416 and potentially revise it. I'm like Ann, I have a real concern about missing something with a student.
And I will say this, Justin, you were here the other night. I thought you spoke great. I thought you did a fantastic job. And because you were here the other night, I'm gonna give you the opportunity to speak if you want and say anything back to what you agree or disagree with. Correct, yeah, go right ahead. I mean, you don't have to stand or
Just
Well,
talk to us.
I like to stand up.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
okay.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate bringing to light that there is some policy discrepancies here. But over the course of hearing everything too, there are a couple items that stood out. Even though it's a screening, right, there's semantics in the words. We can all agree with that. But with the screening, they're identifying risk factors, okay? And if risk factors are just numbers, but we hear that if a student says, oh, I don't want to comply, or I don't want to do this, or they make a statement that might be incriminating or assess a different risk factor, even though they stop or pause during the screening, that information is taken back to somebody else. And it says, hey, even though this person stopped or they said something during a numbers screening, those words are being used in an assessment. And that's where the problem, in my eyes, lies, with the students. We're not just evaluating them on numbers. We're taking their body language, the things they say, and that's determining a risk factor. And that goes beyond the scope of just a screening with numbers. And that's, to me, that's a tough spot. I don't envy you guys either. It's a very tough spot you're in. When I look at my son, when he goes into school, I know that you guys will do everything in your power to protect him, through the day. And, his education, his mental health, everything is on your shoulders. And me as a parent, I'm very in tune with my student, with my son, with my daughter. I coach multiple sports. And honestly, I assess these kids every day too, because you can tell if somebody's not doing well or they're having a rough time at home. It shows. These students wear their emotions on their sleeves. But the piece that I struggle with is the communications to the parents. Because I have those conversations with parents as well. I'll call them, after practice and just say, hey, so-and-so looked like they were having a bad practice. Their mind was somewhere else. You might want to check on them and just kind of provide that feedback. But I'm not screening the child. I'm just kind of, pushing back to the parents what I see. And that's what you guys are doing too, right? I completely get that. And there are students that their parents may not be in tune with them. And we want to capture everybody in that screening that we can, because, I 100% agree the other night, mental health is huge, especially at this age. I think when we look back to the COVID times, this is kind of the generation that's coming through. These kids were kind of pulled out of those social atmospheres and injected into a lot of different things. But I do feel that if you had the written permission to pause this just for a short time to get the written permission, I think you would be able to reach some additional students in other grades to fulfill a larger number, and really help assess other areas instead of just the freshmen. That's all. Thank you so much for.
Yeah, and as a coach, you hit what I consider very important, because I coached high school football for 12, 13 years, and each grade that came through was completely different. And to get on their level, to understand each grade as they came through, you are screening, so to speak, and you know when a kid's having a bad day or a good day or whatever. And I don't doubt that, and I got involved with parents a lot. Not a lot, but enough. But I also agree that if you had the written permission for 300 slots or whatever the case that we have, you may capture other grade levels or other students. However, you're also gonna miss some students as well. So you're on that boundary of what's the right thing to do and the whole 9 yards. So, I mean, because we have already sent this out at the 9th grade, that's why I'm like, okay, we've already sent this out, this is what we're doing at the 9th grade. However, moving forward for 27, I think that we do need to take a look at Norm at Neola, look at the policy, and we need to look at, okay, how can we better serve our students? And sitting down with Katie and the whole 9 yards and saying, okay, how do we want to implement this program day one? So we get, maybe we can take some funding, maybe we can't, but let's try to reach as many students as we can. But I liked your comments the other night. I thought you did a fantastic job. You were precise, you were on point. So that's why I gave you the opportunity tonight, because I know you sat there listening to all of us back and forth, and I just wanted to hear what you thought. Basically, because I kind of knew where your opinion was the other night. So that's why I pointed out to you and gave you the opportunity. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you. And one of the things I shared with Miss Maney, some of these kids do wear their emotions on their sleeves, but some don't. We had a family member that we had no idea that had suicide ideation. We found a note, and we got that family member help. But at this time, ESPERT wasn't being given, and maybe it would have picked it up before we picked it up. And I'll just share that personal information because it is near and dear to me, and I don't want to miss a kid.
Yeah, I think we all are in agreement that these are good screenings to have. I don't think anyone outwardly opposes them happening, and if they do, they can opt out of them. And I just want to reiterate that we have followed what we are supposed to follow. And like Chris, you have mentioned, you feel good about defending this if it came to it, because we have done what HB 8 requires us to do. And going beyond that, Ms. Manning has set up another barrier to make sure parents are notified before any intervention, any discussion, anything like that happens. Letting a parent know if the child's like, I don't want to do this, I'm out, I can't do this. Letting the parent know immediately. That's the next step. Am I correct in that? That would be the next step. Not evaluating them further. Just letting them know, hey, we did the screener, this is what happened. I don't see any negative things that could happen by going forward with this as it has been planned. I think there's also resources to consider about moving this, whether staffing, scheduling, that takes hours to do, probably more than one person. I think that needs to be considered as well. It doesn't seem like a big deal, but I know how that stuff can pile up, being considering of that. So that's where I stand on it. I think that we have done our due diligence in looking at if we are compliant. I would say yes, we are compliant. I do agree that we need to have a discussion about going forward in the future with our policies, making sure there's no conflict, no semantic interpretation. I think there's always going to be some type of interpretation, but I do think that we need to have a plan set up in case this does happen again.
Okay, so if I hear you correctly, you say to leave it as is, that's already been implemented.
I agree with what you had said, yes.
Because technically, we can't vote, but we just have to be able to come to an understanding, because we can't vote in
Correct.
this type of a meeting, so. Ms. Getter.
I appreciate what you said. I see the other side, and I just do not want any student to be missed. That would be heartbreaking. And I also see that by using the screening tool, perhaps we can prevent further mental health issues as the student moves to adulthood. As a ninth grader, grader, if they, with their parent, get them some assistance, either medication or therapy or whatever, is determined that is needed for the student, they could have a much happier school experience and adult life. You know, I know a lot of people that deal with mental health issues as adults. And maybe if they had been screened as a ninth grader, they'd have a much less stress in their lives. So,
And there's so much stigma with mental health, and there shouldn't be, because it's just like any other health condition.
Right.
It's treatable in most cases, and a person can live a productive life. It's when people don't do anything about their mental health, that's when things don't get better. When they don't get therapy or they don't get the right medications, that's when they don't get better. But I too appreciate Mr. Miller as well, that you sat here and listened, and, you know, I appreciate all that you've taken the time to be concerned about the students. How many students do you have in the district?
I have two.
Two?
We love involved parents. Keep
Yeah.
coming back. We love to have you.
As a former Marine, I'm very in tune with SOPs and following procedures, so.
My dad was a Marine, so
Yes.
hoorah.
I got 2 Navy guys right now.
And that's why I mentioned you're in a tough spot, because there is the school policy that kind of outlines that as well.
So if I hear everybody correctly, so we're clear moving forward, is it's been sent out to the parents that this will be taking place on Monday. There will be a reminder sent out, Thursday, Friday.
As soon as possible.
I agree with the reminder. But the screening will take place on Monday. With the intention of, we will resurface this topic throughout 2026, before next school year. So we could probably already put it on our work session for April, if that's when we have one, in regards to this. So if it's implemented, that we can do an opt-in, so to speak, for however many spots that we have available. That's what I kind of hear everybody saying, that they're willing to kind of look for 2027 change, depending on the spots that we have, and look at the Neola policy with Norm as well. So is that what I'm hearing from everybody on the board?
Yes.
Yeah, I think we want to look at that policy and tweak it, and so that we can continue, it sounds like, to possibly keep going with the opt-out.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm at, is to make sure the opt-out is in compliance with all of our policies, including the Neola policy, and how we can expand this, like Mr. Mallory had said, to expand this to more people, since mental health is so important to everybody here.
Yeah, if we could look for some grants, perhaps, that would help pay for something like this, to expand it, that would be great.
Any other further comments, concerns in regards to this topic? We're all on the same page. You're good?
Yes, we know what we're doing.
Okay, I do have a question. Are we going to make sure that more parents perhaps understand that it's happening on Monday? Are we thinking about doing the voice message?
We can do
Okay,
a voice and an email and a text message, both.
Okay.
Tomorrow's Wednesday already, we can do a Wednesday, Friday.
perfect. That would
You wanna go
make me feel
twice?
better too.
Okay, and it can go all 3 ways.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
I know it's probably not the total outcome you were looking for, but, I mean, I think you know that we're at least putting it, on the front burner instead of the back burner.
Yeah,
So-
100%.
Okay.
No, and that's all we can do, you know, bring the issues to light,
Yeah.
work together as a team, to figure out the best possible outcome.
Okay. All right.
Keep people
Thanks.
informed.
So the outcomes will go out on Wednesday and Friday. Any other comments, concerns, or statements? Hearing none, may I have a motion to adjourn at 19:07 or 7:07?
I'll motion.
I second.
Was that, I'm sorry, was that Nunnery and Nice?
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry, I was writing down. Mr. Ambler,
Yes.
Mrs. Getter,
Yes.
Mrs. Neese,
Yes.
Mrs. Nunnery.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.